Ooh. Let's get into it, shall we? Ooh. Getting heavy. So, finally read Kang the Conqueror, the first issue. Hold on, let me get my finger off his face. Yeah, y'all see it. Yeah. So I want to do some narration with it because, you know, I wouldn't be doing narration if I didn't like it. So I thought it was really good. I don't even know what type of grading score I want to give it. It's gonna, it's gonna be a good one. But let me do this narration for y'all. You know what? Since yours truly is promoting the art, the fantastic art of many others, it's only right that I promote myself as well. Check out The Path of Kingdoms wherever books are available. A fantasy fiction ride you won't forget, unlike anything you've ever read before. Check that out, and here we go. 1,000 years ago, Alexander the Great sat with a sage of wide renown. There, he learned a secret that would shake him to his core. There are more worlds than this, said the sage. Their number is near infinite, and they spread across the cosmos, beyond the reach of any man's senses. Alexander looked upon his own empire, from the rich Mediterranean to the steppes of Asia, from its heart in the cradle of civilization to its farthest border, and his eyes filled with tears. Great Alexander, why do you weep? Asked the sage. You have every glory that a mortal has ever known. Is it not worthy of despair? Replied Alexander. There are an infinite number of worlds to conquer, and I cannot become the master of even one. What you think you doing? You chilling with Papa? Huh? You chilling with Papa? Yeah. All right. So the comic book starts with Reed Richards, right? I mean, not Reed Richards. Excuse me, Nathaniel Richards. Nathaniel Richards is in the 31st century, and he is the descendant, one of the long descendants of Reed Richards. Reed Richards is part of the Fantastic Four. He's Mr. Fantastic. Y'all know that. In this book, in the 31st century, apparently everything has been figured out as far as like the human ills of the world. Like, it's really, from what this depicts, it's seemingly like a very safe, and there's nothing really going on as far as imperfections. Everything has been figured out, and it's like basically a utopia. They say it's a post scarcity world, right, where like I said, all the ills of the world have been figured out. And Nathaniel Richards, which isn't surprising, he thinks it's boring, right? So he's like, it's too safe here. You know what I'm saying? It's too safe. Let's shake it up. So he's really trying to figure out ways to um, make life exciting, because there's no problems in the world. Everything's been solved, so it's boring. So he's trying to figure out, how can I make a impression? How can I make my life purposeful? So he actually is like, you know what, I need to find a way to go into like the past. You know what I'm saying? The past is more interesting than the future to him, because seemingly everything has been, figured out. You know what I'm saying? There's no conflicts, there's no problems to be solved. And I thought that was a really interesting concept. Um, so he's trying to search for purpose. He's trying to search for purpose, meaning, so he's flying around. Then he finds his way to a Euro-Asian industry field. Apparently this is a place where Victor Von Doom, uh, Victor Von Doom had established a base, a library of just knowledge, infinite knowledge. Well, not infinite knowledge, but knowledge of the past. Um, and for a young Nathaniel, this is just like heaven. To him, you know, the only mystery in life to him is his ancestors, right? Because they're the ones that actually had to deal with hardship, as opposed to his comfortable life in the 31st century. So he believes that the answers to find his purpose lies within the past. connecting back to the past place. And then he actually is confronted by a robotic sentinel that is in the likeness of Victor Von Doom, which is uh, which is pretty cool. And it attacks him, and then something happens that I didn't even I was like, wow, they just showed him. So then all of a sudden, while he's being attacked by this robotic Victor Von Doom, Kang shows up. You know what I mean? Yeah, so Kang shows up and just blows this robot version of Victor Von Doom to smithereens. And then he introduces himself eventually. So, they meet and I mean, it's pretty cool. So as we know, Kang can control time. He can manipulate time. So he blows this robot to smithereens and sends it back into the past. And him, Kang, and then Nathaniel Richards, they have a discussion, they have a talk. And Kang tells him, I expected better of you, like, but who are you're not. He's asking Kang questions, and Kang is like, I thought you would have sharper questions than this. And Nathaniel Richards is just full of himself. You know, he's a product of the 31st century. Because like I said before, they had all the solutions to everything. There's no problems in the world. It's a post scarcity world, so yeah, there's no lack of resources. They figured out everything, and everyone is basically content and comfortable. And then so Nathaniel Richards is like, I'm the liberator of this lost library of Victor Von Doom. Uh, he said, this is the history of the world. As he looks around this library, and he's like, I'm the heir. I'm the heir apparent to this vast library of knowledge. And then Kang is just like, dude, you're not you're not all that. Like, what I'm saying? You're young. What I'm saying? You're spoiled. And then he just tells him, he actually tells Nathaniel Richards, he's like, the easiest way to tell a lie is to place it in the pages of a book. He says, you'll learn to trust only first-hand sources. I was like, wow, yeah, it's crazy. So yeah, they're having like a back and forth. You know what I'm saying? And he's just lecturing the kid. He's just lecturing the kid, and the kid's like, who are you? Like anybody would. Like, who are you? Like, you look strange. All this. And then he finally revealed, like, he takes off his helmet, and he finally reveals himself. He says, the question with 100 answers, or with 10,000 answers, 10,000 answers. Where did I get that other number from? He said, the question with 10,000 answers, the Conqueror, the Eternal, the God Pharaoh, Ramatut, the Time Emperor, Immortus. I have been them all, and will be again. But there's only one answer that has ever truly mattered. In the end, I am Kang, and in the beginning, I was you. Then he opens up this portal, right? He opens up this time portal, and we already know, if you've seen Loki, he's in control of the TVA, and he's able to manipulate time and go through different, travel through different eras, different worlds. So he opens up this portal, and Nathaniel Richards, he's like, let's go, let's do it. Like, and then he goes in with him. And then he takes him to basically the period of dinosaurs, man. Like, And he tells him this is exactly a year before the asteroid comes and destroys the age of the dinosaurs. So within this time, he teaches him how to be, how to be like him, because they're one and the same. So he tells him, all his history, and he tells him how throughout the years, memories are fogged, but he still remembers the most important moments with, all the pivotal moments in his life that, brought him to, where he is, when he was Ramatut, uh, when he was battling, the Fantastic Four, um, the Avengers. So he basically in his loss, like he said, his loss and frustration. So he's teaching the young Nathaniel Richards, aka young Kang. He's teaching him, okay, these are the things that I accomplished, and these are also my defeats. And I'm teaching you my defeats, so to improve upon that, and so you won't have to face these defeats. You'll be better than I was because I'm your teacher. I'm telling you I did this, so you don't have to go through this. And it was pretty awesome, man. It was pretty awesome. And then he shows him a period where he actually lost someone he loved, and this is one of the things that shows kind of the human side of Kang, because he's always talking about in this he's always preaching about being powerful, being a ruler, a conqueror. He even puts a chip in young Nathaniel's head so he can know all the languages of all the places that Kang has seemingly conquered, right? So he's basically like speeding up his process, maybe which was done to him before, but he's actually he's giving this kid a quick a faster head start. Um, and so back to the point, he shows them a moment in his defeat where he lost a loved one. And this is where you actually see the human side of Kang, because Kang is like, um, through all my checks and balances, being able to learn how to be a ruler, a greater conqueror. The one thing that kind of pushed me, the one thing that kind of pushed me to defeat was love. That's the one thing that pushed me to defeat. That's the one thing that I couldn't conquer. That's the one thing that conquered me, so to speak. And he tells the young Nathaniel Richards, he's like, heed my words. You can be as powerful as you want to be, but never love. In all time, and he says, in all time and space, it is the only way in which you will be conquered. So I'm like, wow, this dude is sad. I know. As soon as he said, I'm like, damn, love. You don't think love's a thing? You know what I'm saying? You think that will defeat you? So I already know he's troubled. Just from all his experiences, he feels like that is a crutch as opposed to something that could, enrich him. And so Nathaniel's like, all right, I'll do this. And then like all young people, he kind of he listens, but he also is like, I'm gonna do my own thing, which is what young people are supposed to do. Find out for themselves. So he actually falls in love with someone through this period. Through this period of dinosaurs. Apparently, in this period of the dinosaurs, there's actually humans, right? So he stumbles upon this the young Nathaniel stumbles upon this woman, and he falls in love. He falls in love, and it was interesting too the way he talked about the connection that he had with this woman, because he says in his time, he says, in the antiseptic world in which I was raised, skin rarely touched, right? So they have a moment where they're touching hands, and so like I was like, wow, like 31st century is so safe and sounds kind of scary, like not scary like but like just like scary, like no one wants to take any risks, so they don't even touch or something. So basically, I'm thinking like in the 31st century, babies aren't probably you don't even need um, uh, interaction, physical interaction to have kids. They're probably like cloned or in laboratories or something. From what it sounds like, he said they rarely touch skin. There's no contact. Um, but he was drawn like we are as humans to have interaction, to have affection, to be near one another, to have that comfort, the interaction, to touch one another. You know what I'm saying? We're humans. We need one another. So it's like, wow. It's like shit. It seems like no wonder why he didn't like the 31st century so much. It seems very boring. It seems very boring. So then he follows her. Um, That's why I show y'all this. So, falls in love with this girl, right? And then he follows her to her valley, to this valley, um, where, you know, there's he follows her to this valley where her house, there's these huts. And then she brings him to her elder. The elder's name is Addie. Um, and he's called the lasting peace, right? And so he's like, I should, Nathaniel's like, I should fear this guy, because I'm in the presence of, a powerful elder, um, which the rest of the village looks up to. The rest of the, you know what I mean. The rest of them look up to this guy because he has wisdom. And Nathaniel's an outsider, and they have a really interesting interaction because they have a really interesting interaction, and then he touches the boy's face. He touches the boy's face and leaves him with the mark. It's almost like foreshadowing. And he says, "Sung by the hymn of time, are you the conqueror and conquered? Yours is the path forged through the darkest forest, the trail burned in glory and pain. I mark you for the beast you slew. I mark you for the life you saved." So that's crazy. And so, talking to this, talking to the woman, they ended up having like, he's in love with her. He's enthralled by her, the culture. Because he's never seen something like this. Like I said, everything was safe in the 31st century, where he's, and seemingly they can, seemingly they probably live longer. There's ways that they can avoid death, and the medicine's probably really great because he's like, the lady tells him, she's like, we know the balance, we know the balance of life and death. We all go back to the essence. And he's just in awe of that because he's like, what? Like, you guys are comfortable knowing that you're going to die, and like the primitive compared to him, because it's like, this isn't like 31st century. There's so many just unexpected twists and turns, and, nothing is secure in this world. And he said, I asked her how people could go on if they knew with such certainty that they'd one day be wiped clean from the slate of history. And also, I should probably backpedal because I think they're talking about the asteroid. He says, it was the afterglow of their nightly celebration. So they're dancing, they're having a great time. You know what I mean? And he's basically enjoying life. You know what I'm saying? He's really enjoying life, like he's never had before. And she said it was the afterglow of the nightly celebration with the sense of the unknown pleasures, dancing with the ashes of the bonfire in the night, that Addie told me the stories of her people, of the star that fell from the endless sea above that made them, and the foretold star that would fall one day to unmake them. And I'm like, that's an asteroid. You know what I'm saying? That's an asteroid. And he said, I asked her, how could people go on if they knew with such certainty that they'd one day be wiped clean from the slate of history? And then she says to him, she says, it is because there is no other way, Nathaniel, she whispered to my firelight, because that is the beauty of living. Yeah. And then she says, the sea is dark and cold, and none can survive in it forever. None ever have, and none ever will. But for a moment, one shining moment, we find purchase and stand against the dark. Yeah, so he's having like just a revelation, like he's seeing the beauty of being immortal. He's seeing the beauty of having hope against the inevitable. He said, and she says, this is where we live, in the space between the stars. And so he runs off. Nathaniel Richards is he's ecstatic. He's in love. He's young. He wants to tell the whole world that he's found something that's bigger than himself. That's bigger than just all this technology and all this cold, heartless stuff. The human love for one another is something that he's never felt, and he's finally feeling it. He's feeling a sense of enlightenment. That's very, yeah, very. He's feeling his humanity. So, for the first time, seemingly, um, and knowing that we have a short amount of time, but the beauty of that is that you got to make it worthwhile. So he's finally feeling that feeling, and then he runs back to tell Kang. He's like, you know, he's like, sir, you won't believe what I found. Blah 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 blah. He's like, you were wrong. There are people here, and it's incredible. He's like, there's culture, there's music, um, I've heard fascinating legends of people, and um, he said, and wait till you see the dancing. So he's telling him about everything, all these things that he just experienced that he's never experienced in the 31st century because everything is safe, and everything is risk free, um, disease free, resources galore. Um, and then he says, the space, the space. She's telling me about this and that, and the space between the stars, and that this infant, life is a promise, but there's a beauty in being human and living and dying. And then Kang is like the space between the stars. Like he's just like he's right here. He's like the space between the stars. He's just like this grumpy old man. And then he's like, and he tells the kid, he's like, it's you who you're not awake. You know what I'm saying? Um, he's like, oh, this was an interesting part too. He says, it is you who are not awake, boy. You dream that the night he said, you dream the naive dreams of heroes, the romance of Alexander, the purity of Steve Rogers. I'm like, okay. And he says, you will unlearn sentimentality, never disappear from my sight again. You will do as you are ordered. You will learn the lessons I teach and never disregard them. And above all else, you will wipe that pathetic paint off your face. And the kid's like, no, you know what I'm saying? He's rebellious, like all kids. Like all kids. He's like, no, I'm not wiping this off my face. Forget you. And it gets even crazier. Um, he says, King doesn't make requests, boy. And he said, you are here by design, and you shall behave by my design. Your future lies in the balance. Heed me or be doomed to a life of failure, of rot and toil and insignificance. And then the kid's like, this is where I think it's amazing because the kid's like, he's young, he's optimistic, he has hope, he's not cynical like, Kang, well, his future self. And he said, that's just it, you're wrong. You're the one who's failed. You talk endlessly about conquest and glory, but you're just a drunk who makes me memorize his defeats. How doom tricked you. You at the fall of Manhattan. So he's basically talking about all his defeats. He says how the Four laid you low in the sands of Egypt, and that's the Fantastic Four. And he says, my life is my own, King. It's out there, living on without me, and the people of that tribe. We can save them from the coming cataclysm. If time means nothing to us, then why can't I use it to say the first thing in this world, in this blasted world that I? And then he goes back to, and he has feelings. He has a connection with these people. So he's like, why can't if time, blah blah blah, if it doesn't mean anything, um, why can't I use it to say the first thing in this blasted world that I actually? And he's like, and the king's like, say it, and he's like, love, why can't I say, why, if time means nothing, why can't I save the one thing in this blasted world that I love? And then he just freaking slaps the dog shit out of him, you know what I'm saying? And because basically he just did the one thing Kang told him not to do. Out of all the things he probably told him not to do, this was the biggest thing. Don't fall in love. And he falls in love. And then Kang just completely just destroys this place. He actually brings the young man to the valley to look at to look at its destruction. The young Nathaniel is like, no, don't do it. And he just freaking just obliterates this place. You know what I'm saying? Just a madman. And there's just he's like, I thought the 31st century was he's like, I thought that basically like his existence, he thought he was caged, you know what I'm saying? He said, I thought my past existence was my cage, but I finally figured out that Kang is my cage, he's holding me back. And so eventually he finds the goal to be like, forget this, dude. I'm getting, while Kang is asleep, he actually, modifies Kang's suit to fit him, you know. And then the last day, the day before the asteroid hits, because I'm pretty sure it's easy for them to, this is a TVA we're talking about. The ruler, we're talking about Kang the Conqueror, who's the mastermind behind the TVA. So I'm pretty sure, I mean, they knew when the asteroid was going to hit. So a day before the asteroid hits, um, Nathaniel Richards, he actually, puts on the suit, and while Kang is sleeping, and he leaves. He leaves just before the asteroid hits, right? So he's getting the suit, and he leaves, and he turns on the portal, and he escapes. He escapes and just leaves you know, his older self to be obliterated, like the rest, like the dinosaurs, like the dinosaurs. And he lands somewhere, right? He's calibrating, the time machine, and he at first he's fearful that he's gonna end somewhere where there's no people. You know what I'm saying? Which makes sense, right? He's just winging it. He's like, oh shit, well I left. He leaves, um and he escapes basically the being bullied by his future self, and he leaves him, and leaves him to the destruction along with the dinosaurs, and he escapes the clutches of Kang, or at least he thought he did, and then he ends up in the Ramatut's empire. That's how it freaking ends. He ends in it, what I'm saying, to be continued. And I got part two, what I'm saying. He ends in Ramatut's empire, and he's basically seized already. Seize him, basically, what I'm saying? And this is fantastic. I didn't mean this, this I'm just gonna put a spoiler in the comments. I mean in the title. But this was fantastic, man. Like absolutely fantastic. And yeah, I'm looking forward to reading the second one and giving y'all a review on that. But this one I give it 8 point. I give it 8 out of 10. You know what I'm saying? Excuse me, my phone. But y'all stay tuned.